And good evening. Welcome to Now You See TV. I'm your host, Jake Grant, and tonight we have an exciting show for you guys. I am joined by Robbie Davidson of Celebrate Truth. How you doing, Robbie?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on, Jake.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into some awesome stuff. You just had a new film released late last year, Scientism Exposed To. We're going to be diving into this topic. I titled the show tonight, Scientist Secrets and Conspiracy Fact. Now, Robbie has been diving into this whole spectrum of topics in the past few years with his work in Scientism Exposed, and also as the curator of uh, uh, the Flat Earth 2017 conference, Flat Earth Conference 2017, and of course the one that's upcoming here in Denver in 2018. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that tonight, a little bit about what brought Robbie into doing these film projects with Scientism Exposed, what gave him that desire to just expose these science so-called religions that have infiltrated our education system. And so with that said, Robbie, welcome to Now You See TV, and let's just start with what brought you into studying into this topic of scientism and wanting to make these films, Scientism Exposed.
Well, I've always had like a passion for filmmaking, but as long as I can remember, creation science was a big thing for me. I became Christian at the age of 21, and for a lot of my life, I kind of walked away from pretty much any notion of the Bible or God based on the fact that science had proved it otherwise. And so for me, seeing that, when it comes to science, this is the number one reason that people, walk away from the Bible, from truth, is because, scientism, and that's why I've deemed it scientism, is because it's no longer science. I mean, we're all definitely happy when we hear things that are scientifically proven through the empirical method. But a lot of what we're being taught now is not science at all. It's scientism. And that's why it was so important to come out, with these films. But what preluded with that was basically discovering that a lot more lies were going on than I looked into in the past, based on creation science, getting into evolution. A lot of the creation ministries have done a fantastic job exposing the lies, of evolution and Darwinism and these type of things. But getting into cosmology and getting into other areas, this is where it got really interesting to see that could it be that they'd lied to us, not just about the biological sciences, but also getting into cosmology. And that's where things really started to take a turn. And for a long time, I've been very outspoken. I had kind of gone, through the truther stage of looking into things like 9/11 and understanding our world is governed by very evil forces. So I had got into, satanic ritual abuse. I got into studying the cults and other religions, getting to understand the New World Order. And to me, it seemed like this was an important topic because it seemed like a lot of the agenda that was being pushed was being used through the scientists. I mean, it was like, well, scientists discovered or scientists have proven this. Therefore, there's no debate. But there is a debate, and that's why the films were so important to come out with, is showing that there is a debate to be had. There's a lot of cover-ups going on, and it's interesting that you've termed the show conspiracy fact, but that's the truth here, is that there are conspiracy theories. But when we read in the Bible and we see that, that's not a conspiracy theory, that's a conspiracy fact. And it definitely says that world leaders would conspire to go against the Most High. And that's exactly what we're seeing. And we're seeing is scientism is kind of the high priest. They call him the high priest now. Before, it used to be, seers and other, individuals. Now in our modern day age, and we're looked at as the world's wisdom, we look at it as the scientist. And I find it very intriguing when it comes to the morality, when it comes to the origins, when it comes to, telling people the story of life and where they came from. It's the scientists that come in and say, we've already proven this. And yet, when you start looking into things like the Big Bang, or you start looking into all these claims they have based on the fact that stars are this far away, or the sun is made out of this, or the moon is this far away, this is not scientifically proven at all. These are theories. And that's why this is so important, when it comes to this topic, is because, children are being taught this as fact when it's nothing more than theories. And I actually go so far as I would say that, scientism or Big Bang cosmology it's fairy tales for adults.
I mean, all of the time we've heard Christian apologetics coming out challenging the evolutionary theory, but it's very interesting that in the same science realms that they would challenge a scientist that was promoting the theory of evolution, they seem to accept their viewpoint when it comes to other topics, and they just kind of bow down and are like, okay, you're the expert, even though they're willing to go and challenge them on topics like evolution and the Big Bang Theory, because it very blatantly contradicts things in the Holy Bible and the scriptures. And so in other areas, what are you seeing that people need to start challenging these scientists with these preconceived notions instead of just kind of giving them a pass?
Well, I would say, I mean, anything when it comes, let's just stick with creation for now. But I would say that the majority of people that I run into that are opposed to looking into cosmology, they're 6 day literal creationist, or they're saying, the creation account is literal based on the days, based on the sequence. And I would say, well, that's really intriguing because if you get into, Genesis, it talks about the sun, moon, and stars being created after the earth. That means the earth was created, then the sun, moon, and stars. Well, if you get into Big Bang cosmology, you clearly are showing that suns were created before Earths. And again, we have big problems here because it talks about, millions and billions and trillions of suns. Well, it's funny. The Bible says there's one sun. And it also says stars. So stars are separate from suns, and sun is separate from a star. But yet, this is what the modern day science, this is what scientism are teaching us, is they're blurring the lines of anything that can be deemed literal in the Bible. And I'd say this is why it's so important, is because we're talking about the holy word of God. We're talking about the Bible. And if we cannot take it literal in the sense when it comes to creation, there's a very specific reason that it was used in many times. For example, the fact that over and over and over, we see that the earth does not move. We see that the earth is fixed. We see it's immovable. All of these adjectives to support the earth. Now, even if you were going to go poetic, there's not one verse in the Bible that says the earth flies through the heavens like say, well, all these verses are allegory or poetic. Well, even poetry conveys a certain message. And that's what we find is even the poetic, like say Psalms, for example, when they're getting into these different languages, it's all conveying a message. And that's what I'm saying is so important is when you get into Genesis, when you get into the creation account, you've got literal definitions over and over and over saying it's fixed, it's firm, it's immovable. This is the earth. What we've been taught, though, however, is that the earth is wobbling, it's spinning, it's flying through the galaxy, it's flying around the sun. And yet, you read in Joshua, which most Bible, scholars would say that's a historic text. It's not poetry, it's not allegory. It was commanded that the sun and the moon stop. That means they were moving. Well, wait a minute. Science taught us that the sun doesn't move. It's the earth that moves. But the Bible says that the sun moves and the earth doesn't move. Who do we believe? And see, that's the whole thing is that the science model came forward and we're like, well, we can't debate science. Science is proven. It's the truth. Therefore, if it conflicts with the Bible, we got to toss out the Bible. Well, what if you started really looking into the true scientific method and found out that most of these things, for example, the movement of the earth, there is not one scientific experiment anywhere. And I've been looking, it's almost been 3 years now, that there'll be one experiment to conclusively prove the spin or the movement of the earth. It does not exist. And that should be surprising to us in the fact that there's not one conclusive experiment to prove the movement of the earth. Furthermore, if we get even crazier on the idea, if you get into Bible, the literal Bible definition, the earth is described completely different than what we've been taught as a spinning ball flying through space. Well, if you take the definition and you look into it and you say, well, wait a minute, science has taught me that we're on a spinning ball flying through space, 25,000 miles in circumference. Well, if we take all these, equations, we should be able to go out and scientifically prove that using the scientific method. However, you can't. And these are the two big premises. I would say that, I gave a speech last year at a conference, and I said, one of the greatest lies the devil taught all of us, and I mean all of us, and that's the thing, that this topic affects you. It doesn't matter, what race you are, it doesn't matter what religion you are, it doesn't matter what age you are. It all teaches us that we're on this spinning ball globe. And I would say that the biggest lie that the devil ever taught us is that the earth is a planet. Because we keep saying, oh, all up in the sky, look at all those other planets. They're all round. We must be round. Or, what about all the other planets? We're just another planet. No, read the Bible. The earth is unique. It's special. It's unlike anything else that God created above us. And that's the reality. Everything that was created revolves around us. We're stationary. Everything revolves. We don't. And that's what's really intriguing when you get into these things. And at first glance, you're like, wait a minute, this is crazy. How could anyone, it's 2018 now, how could anyone believe that we're not moving or flying around the sun, or that we're not even a spinning ball? We're not even a globe. That's the surprising thing, is usually everyone that comes to this topic looking into the deep areas, the dark occultic nature of scientism, how deep and how dark does it get? It gets incredibly dark and it gets incredibly deep if you're willing to go down that rabbit hole. And as you go down, you will find out that it is unbelievable, just to the extent all these things, all these lies that have been perpetrated. And the big question, and we'll get into it, is but why would they lie? And if you understand the spiritual nature of the world, the biggest assault is always on the word of God. And if you can get people to discredit the word of God, throw it away, not believe in it, job accomplished. And this is in Satan's goal. This is the number one goal of Satan. And it's so brilliant in such a way that there was all these other competing belief systems and religions, and yet he masqueraded this grand deception inside truth, inside science. Therefore, he could come with this veneer of science when all of a sudden he was spewing out this evil scientism. And it is. And if you think for 1 minute that Dawkins or Neil deGrasse Tyson or Bill Nye, if you think at all these guys are just atheists, they don't believe in anyone, why do they hate God so much? If you look at it, the way they talk about the Messiah, the way they talk about the Holy Book, the way they have an animosity going on, and you can clearly, evidently see it if you have the spiritual eyes to see. So what I say is, this is why this topic is so important, is because most people, including myself, went away from the Bible, and any notion of this ridiculous notion that there was, God that created the world in 6 days and rested, or there was a Noah's Ark that had all these animals on it, or one by one, the Tower of Babel. It didn't matter what story was in the Bible. But when you actually took this worldview framework, when you actually start looking into it, and not just laughing it off, looking into it and saying, could it be true? I want to see if it is. And that was the mind blowing thing, that when you looked into each one of these things, there was a resounding yes, that every single ounce of everything that was in the Bible was true, including the origins, including where we came from, why we're here, and exactly what God put us on and what's in the sky. And that's why I find this so fascinating, is because so many people, I've never seen a topic unlike this topic. I've been involved in so many different topics the last 20 years, but I've never seen one topic such as this investigation looking into science or looking into NASA. We'll get into NASA more because, again, the scientists, they're in NASA as well. And they're the ones that are saying, NASA scientists discover 18 new planets. And, we're just like, oh, I guess they discovered planets. They've got magical telescopes to see, a trillion light years away. These really absurd distances, just like evolution, when they teach us millions and millions of years. Well, in the galaxy, they teach us billions and trillions of years. I mean, 1 light year is a trillion miles away. They're talking about 21 light years away, some of these stars. I mean, if you start thinking of these distances, they're absurd. But again, this is what we break down. This is what we're talking about. And in each of my films, Scientism Exposed and Scientism Exposed To, I go along this journey, getting people to start questioning things and do your own research. Don't listen to me. Don't even listen to what my movies say or my documentaries or my videos on my channel. Go out and do your own research. That's what I implore people to do, because you'll be surprised at what you find when you do.
Now, with this topic, I know there's some things that you just started to bring out, especially about our cosmology and our place and the shape of the Earth, that, some viewers that we might have watching right now are like, okay, what is this guy on about? And I want you to maybe dive into the difference between actual observable science and what scientism is, so we can really kind of break down why it is people around the world are starting to believe that the Earth is flat, and what it means for them to be doing empirical science and to be confirming these beliefs that we see in Scripture. Because too often we see that there seems to be a divide between people who are taking the Bible literally and people who uphold science, but they don't need to be in conflict. And so I'd like you to speak to that aspect of what is the difference between real science that you would advocate and you advocate in these films, and what scientism is.
Yeah, and I would say that when you're looking at it, I mean, when I start Scientism Exposed, I show the dichotomy between science and scientism, where science is under the scientific method. When we're getting into empirical science, what we're talking about is testing, observing, repeating, something that can be conducted. It could be repeated over again. You can observe it. You can come to the same results. But the idea that, for example, evolution, we have never ever found transitional fossils. There's no You cannot replicate anything through the scientific method in the past or in the future. I mean, this is just a given right now. So when they talk about things that they're seeing in the future, or they're saying, things that happened in the past, there's no way to scientifically prove that. It's a theory they have, and they're conducting this data to support their, hypothesis when it comes to the understanding of, where the conclusions are. So some people will say, well, wait a minute. Okay, well, maybe they want a certain conclusion, therefore they're drawing their data this way. But you, on the other hand, you're trying to conclusively prove, say, for example, a flat Earth. So therefore, you're going into it biasly. But the ironic thing here is that that's not the case at all. Most people that came to this topic laughed at it, thought it was ridiculous, and furthermore, went out to prove it wrong. I would say the majority of people that start looking into it, of the lies of scientism and NASA, when they first heard someone questioning science or NASA or the shape of the Earth for that matter, they laughed at it and they said, you know what, I'm going to go out and I'm going to debunk this. And I'm talking about, if you really want to engage in a debate, engaging in a debate is not calling another person name, calling them stupid or an idiot or a moron. I mean, I've been called every name in the book, and that's fine. I mean, most times when I challenge them to a public debate, they'll just back off. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, so a lot of people like to say these things, but they really won't back it up. And what I say is, before you're going to call people, names, why don't you go investigate it and find out through the scientific method if there is anything to support it? It's fine if you want to believe it. I say all the time, it's fine what you believe, but believing something doesn't make it the truth. And it doesn't really matter what we all believe. What matters is the truth. And that's why the truth matters. We're all in this investigation to find out the truth. So I tell people all the time, I don't conclusively know 100% what it is, but I know what it's not. Because again, there's nothing in the scientific method. And I also know there's an agenda put forward to get people, discrediting, the Bible. And what I find interesting is, if you look at the Bible, hypothetically, literally, why is it that scientism have taken a 180-degree opposite approach to every single thing in the Bible if you were going to take it literal? So what I say is, you don't have to take it literal. What if you did take it literal? What would happen? It's very intriguing if you actually just try this experiment and take it literal. What do you find? An entire conflict. It doesn't contradict. It all pieces together. That's what I find fascinating. It's not like one or two things and then the rest of it doesn't make sense. It all kind of comes together, and you start getting an understanding based on your own senses. And that's another thing. Your question also, when it came down to science, science can be observed and proved through your senses. What do we observe with our senses? How many of you have felt the movement of the Earth? We're supposedly spinning at over 1,000 miles at the equator, and again, no one's felt it. We're speeding around the sun at 66,000 miles an hour, and the numbers are absurd when you start getting into flying around the galaxy. But this is the idea that our senses that we were born with, that we were created with, they tell us a reality, and it's scientism that teach us to get out of that reality. As children, we're taught, no, I know it doesn't make sense, but this is where you live. We don't have the mental capacities to even debate that at that age when we're taught that we're on a globe. So it does seem crazy. It seems absurd. Wait a minute. What about all those pictures? And that's where we kind of, transgress into NASA. And you start getting into, the pivotal point for most people is the moon landing. So forget all this talk about the shape of the Earth. Start thinking about the moon landing and say to yourself, okay, if I believe in the moon landing, why do I believe in the moon landing? If you were going to actually collect all this evidence and find out, what do I have to put together to support the case that they did indeed land on the moon? Is it because you saw, somebody saw it on TV or heard it on the radio? Is it because the majority of people knew that it was true? They believed in it? Like I said before, it doesn't matter what we believe. What matters is the truth. And this is the reality. You have to crack the foundations of the moon landing because it's such a pivotal point in mankind's history. Like they say, in the 60s and 70s, we supposedly went 238,000 miles away. But since then, and I bring this up in my documentaries, I bring it up actually in Scientism Exposed, and I've used this countless times when I'm traveling, talking to people. But why is it that in the 60s and 70s, we went 238,000 miles away? And yet, this is what NASA claims, or any space agency anywhere in the world claim, the furthest that man has been in space is 400 miles. That's like a fraction of a percent. We should be like past the moon. We should be like, around the moon every, month. We should be at some other planet. They tell us that they have probes on Mars and Pluto, but I'm talking about man. How far has man been in space? And the reality is 400 miles is what they claim. That's weird. And most people go, that is kind of strange. Why, in almost 50 years, have they only been 400 miles when supposedly in the 60s and 70s, they went back and forth to the moon, no problem, quarter of a million miles away. Things like this are important. And that's why I came up with the movie Scientism Exposed. And then the sequel is to get people questioning these things, not to just throw this content right in their face. It's a perfect tool if you're talking to someone, you want to get into the truth, you want to get into these topics, but not in an aggressive, not in a forefront way where it's going to turn someone off. Because quite honestly, this topic turns people off. It enrages them. It makes them laugh. It does all sorts of emotions. I've never heard, two words, flat Earth. Those two words just make people go nutty. Rob Skiba has a great quote, but he says, if you ever want to see the inner psycho in someone go crazy, just mention flat Earth. And again, it's intriguing to me the responses you get when you bring up this topic. But again, we've seen all these depictions of boats going over the edge and silly notions. And that's how they got this, mindset for most of us to believe that it's really silly. You shouldn't even look into it. And what I'm saying and what I do in my documentaries, in my movies, and in just my pursuit for truth is get people to question these things. And again, there's always an answer for everything if we search for it. But again, just by hearing the authorities of the world and the scientists, I mean, give me a break. Bill Nye, the science guy, if anyone's actually seen the special on Netflix, Bill Nye Saves the World, if you watch that, even from a purely agnostic point of view, you have to say, wait a minute, something's going on here. He's spouting nonsense. And I mean, if anything, we have to look at, these are the wisest men that are set up. These are the pinnacles of all science: Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye. And again, ask yourself the question, why is it that these guys are set up as the media spokespeople for all things science, when you're going to find there's a massive agenda? They're moving into all sorts of things. Climate change, they're getting into the whole transgender thing. Scientists have already proven there's a, transgender gene, or there's more than, 5 genders now. And they won't show you the empirical science. They won't show you the experiment. They won't even show you the chromosomes. They'll just say scientists have discovered. And we're at a point now where we just blindly accept. And we need to start questioning. We need to actually, and this is what I've been doing with a lot of the work that I've been doing, is, calling them out and saying, look, if it's so silly and you think we're morons, then come to the table. It should be very easy. You're brilliant. You've got all the degrees. Come to the table and let's just see, how quickly, you can take us down based on your true science. But again, you're going to find that they're going to be backing on scientism. They have been moved away from science for a very long time. They're clinging on to scientism, general consensus theory. And that's what's the dangerous thing, is it's like democracy. It's like mob mentality, 51% rule. Again, this is not good. People will always talk about democracies being great. Democracies aren't good. It means that 51% have rule. And it's the same way when it comes to 51% of scientists, they have rule. What about the 49%? We'll always hear about, this percentage of scientists that don't agree, but they never show these guys on the news. They never show them. And that's what we're finding, is that now scientists are actually getting brave. And Scientism Exposed To, I'm talking to a paleontologist and an archaeologist, and they talk about many stories of a lot of really good scientists that are really scared to come out with the findings, because they're going to lose their job. They're going to lose their tenure. There's lots of consequences now. It's like the big boys group. If you don't play along, get out. And that's what we need to address, because we do have the power when it comes to social media, when it comes to these platforms, whether it's YouTube, is we can get this message out, and it's talking to a person, one person at a time. Don't underestimate the power of scientism. Understand that basically they are involved with every single facet, from the origins to where you came from, to how we're affecting the planet. We've got to help Mother Nature, and we got to band together, and we got to do these things. Or, teaching people that basically they can be any gender they want. Science comes in and confirms it. Science drills this into us, and we really need to wake up. And Scientism Exposed, my documentaries are really starting to wake up a ton of people to the lies of scientism. And it's not just when it comes to cosmology. This runs the gamut. And again, I deal mostly when it comes into the origins, when I get into, the evolutionary, but also Big Bang cosmology, even into what NASA are discovering, and showing just the ludicrous notion that things that they're claiming they're doing, and they're, up there. And we're finding so many people now are waking up to the lies of scientism. And what's really intriguing is when you wake up to the lies of NASA and all the lies and about that agency, or the agencies with education or scientism itself, when you wake up to the lies of scientism, instantly you run to the Bible, you run to the notion, at least, that there is a creator, that you were special, that you were designed, that you are unique, that we are here for a purpose. You're not a random accident. You're not just a blip. And this is what scientism has done, has crushed everyone's self-esteem, their worth, their dignity, where if you read the Bible and you understand logic, the fact that an intelligence is behind this entire thing, and an intelligence created us for a reason, for a purpose. We are special, we are unique, and that's what I want to drive home. And when people realize that, and when they come out of the clutches of scientism, because it's an evil spiritual force, it really is, but when they come out of that clutch and they see the freedom and the love that the Most High has for them, especially when it came to sending his son, this is where the most amazing thing happens, and people discover truth, and they understand John 14:6, which I leave most of my videos on Celebrate Truth, after, is John 14:6. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Truth matters, and there's one truth. And let's go on the journey and find it.
This is so exciting that people are finding faith, people who are atheists or agnostics that are starting to question these things that they've been taught all their life are absolute truths. And whenever they discover that they've been lied to by a system that has an agenda, it's driving them into their Bibles. And I'd like you to maybe go over what this particular agenda is. What a lot of people are going to ask, why would they want to deceive us when it comes to for cosmology, for example? Of course, many Christians today, they might understand where the deception is based on when it comes to a Big Bang evolution and stuff like that. But when it comes to cosmology specifically, what deception is that fostering, and what is the agenda there that people are waking up to?
Well, yeah, it's a really good question for sure. And I dealt with it a lot in Scientism Exposed To. And I get into this because the first one, gets into these questions, and it starts to paint a picture and get people start asking those questions. But in Scientism Exposed To, I start really getting into, why, and why NASA, and why, what would be the point of this? And I already addressed the fact that they're trying to keep people away the number one thing, but also they're gearing us up for a great deception, and having something in place that we're all ready and prepared with a scientific worldview helps basically to facilitate this deception in a greater way. And what I mean by that is what we're finding now, and I don't want to go into all of it, but I'll go into a bit of it because I cover quite a bit of it in Scientism Exposed To. But what really is going on here is you're going to see emergings of Hollywood, scientism, and you're going to see kind of this agenda play right now when it comes to transpermia, when it comes to the alien agenda. And what's really intriguing is they're all converging together, even science now. And I have some crazy quotes in Scientism Exposed To. But one of the big things that they're pushing now is the fact that, well, the missing link is that aliens at some point seeded us. And they're the ones, that injected DNA into a monkey. And that's exactly, where we come from. And what's really intriguing with that is I believe that there will be a deception and that we will have contact at some point. They're out there looking for life, and everyone says, well, whether you believe in aliens or not, the fact is they're out there believing there's life. And most scientists believe that obviously through the probabilities, there's, based on the probability factor, of course, there's, millions and millions of other life forms, and they will come into, existing with us. And what I see as the great deception is coming and convincing the world basically the story. And what's really intriguing is if you look at Hollywood, you're going to see kind of this, when the alien thing happened, it was all these, extraterrestrials coming and they were hostile. And what you're going to notice now, the majority of the agenda now is that there are helpers. They're coming to assist us, like global warming or diseases, or they're coming with this greater technology to help us and aid us. And what I find intriguing is if you look at this narrative of assisting us, they're also kind of preparing us, and befriending us, but also preparing us for possibly a coming invasion to come. And what I find intriguing is if you look in Revelation, you'll see that the whole world gathers to make war with God when he comes in the clouds. And what's intriguing about that is how do you convince the whole world to actually try to, go to war, with the Most High, and this is the intriguing thing is you can see that Lucifer, right from, Gnosticism plays looking at Yahweh and painting him as the evil dictator, and yet Lucifer was the light bearer. He was the benevolent one. He was the one to give us freedom. And this is the same kind of message that will be conveyed when they come. They'll be like, we're here to help you and liberate you, and we're going to stand beside you. But there's this evil, life force out there that's coming, and they're like the Borg. They're trying to assimilate everything, and we're going to help you, fight this war. But we'll work together, and we'll destroy this evil enemy coming. And I think that's one big play that's going to come in the future. You can see media, Hollywood. You can see science. They're all starting to talk like this. It's not just me talking. Go look for it yourself. You'll see Bill Nye talking about it. Neil deGrasse Tyson's talking about it. Dawkins talking about the fact of we probably evolved from another life form through evolution, an alien life form. So again, these are the science. These are the authorities all talking about this common story of that we came from aliens or we came from higher life forms. And more people would rather believe in the idea that we were seeded by aliens, injected into a monkey or whatever, rather than, the biblical account of how creation began and the story, from the beginning right to the end. And that's what's incredible about the Bible is it's not just a story about where we began. It's also prophetic in the sense of what's going to happen. And what is going to happen is the whole world is going to gather together to make war. And if you look at science and you look at scientism and all these things coming together, they're all painting this picture. So I believe that one of the big reasons why we had to be a planet, why the Earth, and that's why I say that's one of the greatest deceptions, the Earth being a planet. We're not a planet. And you can laugh, you can think whatever you want. The fact is, prove it. Prove that we're a planet. And again, have a good time at it. You're not going to be able to prove it at all through the scientific method. So I'm going to sit here comfortably and say, obviously, the Earth is not a planet. But the idea that we're just another planet in the solar system of millions of other planets gives us the idea that there's other billions of life forms, that, we're in this, ever expanding universe. The whole Big Bang narrative is completely a lie. And what I say all the time is, as far as Christians or as far as people that were believing in the Bible, for a very long time, all we did is we attached the creator to God to the Big Bang. We would talk to someone and they say, well, wait a minute, the scientific explanation of the Big Bang is this: nothing became something, exploded, and created everything. How is that scientific? Try to replicate that through the scientific method. Try to figure out how nothing becomes something. Impossible. Yet that's the official narrative. So they would say nothing became something, exploded, and created everything. Or God created everything, right? It's kind of like, God spoke and everything, existed. So what we did is we attached God to the Big Bang. And what I'm saying is you need to follow the deception back, because it's like, even when it comes to evolution, well, where did evolution came from? It came from the Big Bang. Evolution is only possible based on a Big Bang narrative. So that's what I did when I started researching this, is I went all the way back. I didn't, start with evolution. I said, well, wait a minute, but evolution comes from the Big Bang. Let's go right back to the Big Bang, and discovered that the entire Big Bang narrative is wrong. It's completely laughable. And not only is it laughable, it's in complete contradictory terms when it comes to the Bible. So as a Bible believer, if you're watching this, you've got to contend with a lot of things. If you're going to stick with the Big Bang cosmology, everything you've been taught in the Bible, you're going to have to chuck something out. I would definitely chuck out scientism, keep the Bible, but at least you have a choice there. You can't have both. And so many people were trying to merge both together and say, well, it's allegory or it's poetic, and they're trying to put the two together. You can't. It's either that or it's that. Either the earth was created before the sun, or the sun was created before the earth. What is it? Talk to any scientist and they'll tell you suns were created before the earth. Therefore, you've got a contradiction. So you've got to look to the Bible. Now, if you're watching this program, you don't even believe in the Bible, fine, but you need to actually start looking at it and seeing all the contradictory natures. People will talk about, oh, there's all these discrepancies. But when you start looking at it, you'll find nothing but lies continually through the entire narrative. So going back right to the Big Bang and discovering the entire thing is a lie, we need to start from the scratch. But the best thing you can do as the arbiter of truth, and knowing that you have an authority of truth, is look at the Bible, and even do it as hypothetical. Look into it, look at what scientism has taught us, and you're going to find that more and more people are starting to look into the scientific method to prove the reality of what the Bible said from day one. And it tells us all these things right through. Like I said, when it gets to eschatology, prophetic nature, when it comes to revelation, when it comes to the origins, and everything in between. But when it comes to creation specifically, we have to look at it and we have to say, what do we do with pillars? What do we do with the earth is movable, fixed? What do we do with the firmament? And the firmament's a huge one. And so many people looking into the firmament, including myself, came to this based on the study of the firmament. So many of us just disregarded that, or we just passed by that. And yet it's right there, right at the beginning of Genesis, the firmament, right? And it said the sun, moon, and stars were put in the firmament when it was created, when it was put there, and what it was there for. What was the firmament there for? It was to separate the waters from the waters. Could it be that there's water above us? The Bible says so. Psalms talks about Bible, the water still being above, us. Well, what about the flood? Yes, the flood happened, but yet, in books after that, it still talks about the water. So what I'm saying is, if you read the Bible literal, it's saying there's water up there. Start doing some searches on water and space. Start looking at some different things. You're going to find some really intriguing videos that are coming out now. Even the high optics and technology has caught up with video cameras where people are zooming in on these things that are supposedly, 21 light years away or 21 trillion miles away. Yet, our $600 cameras can zoom in and see, pretty close. I mean, the Nikon P900 camera can zoom in incredibly close to the moon. Like, I mean, you can see craters and all, but can't really find that lander, the lunar lander, can't really find anything. Well, wait a minute. NASA, they've got some pretty high optics. Hey guys, why don't you zoom in and show us where you landed on the moon? These are the type of things. Has anyone seen it? Has anyone even seen the other side of the moon? These are the funny questions that no one really asks. And we need to start asking these questions, even because we're looking for the answers and we're curious. But to me, all of these things fit together, and really, it's going to play a vital part in the coming deception. If we have a scientific worldview already, there, we will believe the lies. Every one of them come, including the Great Deception. But every lie that we get assaulted with, we're going to believe easier if we have a scientific worldview. Think about it. Think of any lie that the science model is coming along and scientists are discovering it. You're going to find that, yes, most of the deceptions that are out there in the world have science to back it up, to validate it. Right? Remember, Satan was using all these lies, but he was using scientism to come in with their lab coats and say, "Yep, we'll give you the stamp of approval. We validate it." And that's what is so important about this topic is we're dealing with scientism and we're dealing with science. These guys are the validators of all things that are truth in our world. What if they've been co-opted? What if they have been completely perverted and changed and all of a sudden been infiltrated and been used by Satan for a very long time? And that's what I'm finding with all this investigation when it comes to, what's happening in our world, what our world is, and everything in between. We have been lied to on a serious front.
One of the things recently I've heard that really makes people have trouble questioning what is coming out of NASA with the Apollo missions and stuff is the fact that they say there were very good Christian men who went to the moon and came back, and they gave that testimony of seeing the Earth, and it was so beautiful. In fact, one of those scientists brought back a rock called the Genesis rock, which was the very rock that basically backed up the theory of evolution with the 4 billion-year-old Earth. And yet these people are the ones that make it difficult for some Christians to question NASA because they see people who proclaim to be Christians and Bible believers involved with these agencies. And so now I'd like to talk to you a little bit about cognitive dissonance and why it is so hard for people to question their preconceived notions. Because I know there's people watching right now that might be throwing out the statement, "Oh, this is a distraction." And I'm sure you've heard that. This is just a distraction. We don't need to be worrying about what shape the Earth is, what NASA is lying to us about. So whenever it comes to cognitive dissonance and people holding on to their beliefs so firmly and being unwilling to just open their minds and question what they are being told. What do you see? Why do people hold on to these preconceived notions?
I mean, it's tough for a lot of people. I think it's looking into the world. It's their world. It's like what they've known their entire life. Sometimes the deception is so grand that you can't think of anything outside of that bubble. It's almost like when you look into 9/11. And I use 9/11 as a good example because no, there's no way the government could be going against its people, or no, the government's good and they're set up to help us and protect us. And no. So what I'm saying is, I say the same thing I see from people that are not wanting to look into this topic, have a hard time, sometimes with like 9/11, especially at the beginning, because it's like, no, it's official and the news is true, what we see on TV. So I just think that it's their world. It's a scary thought to think that, everything you've been taught is a lie. And when I'm getting into, these issues, when I get into scientism, really it is everything that you believe to be true. And I mean, this is your world. This is like everything you walk out every day and you look up, or you look at that sun, or you look at that moon. And again, you basically have these preconceived notions of everything you've been taught, and it's like it goes a long way, and it's really hard to kind of get out of that. And so many people that say, well, this is a distraction, I would beg to differ in the fact that I have never seen more people, coming to Christ. I've never seen more people, going out and buying a Bible, coming to the realization that there is a creator. I mean, these are people that are hardcore atheists, and I talk to these people all the time. I had a person on my couch just a few months ago, at my private premiere, and he was an atheist his whole life, and in a split second, he became a creationist. In a split second, he's like, I was created, I am unique, and he was along on his journey. And again, we're there to help that. So I would say, as Christians, if you're kind of rolling your eyes and looking at it and saying, what's the bother? If you have a passion for evangelism, if you have a passion to reach the lost, this is a fantastic way to reach the lost. And I would say that don't jump right into the shape of the earth. Start slow, right? And start getting into things, because again, understand that the authorities in our world, so many people were trying to just attack the lie and trying to, go in at, the truth. And what I'm saying is, if you start cracking the foundation of a building, the building falls. Like if you take out a foundation, it falls. Well, what's the foundation of our world? The foundation is found in education and scientism. And these are really foundational parts of society. So when you're talking to people, if you can crack a foundation of something that's paramount, for example, like NASA, most people believe their ideas of space. And when I'm going to get into, when I talk about the universe or the sun, moon, and stars, most of us, and I'd say 99% of us, when we think of space or whatever, we will either think of Star Wars or Star Trek, or we'll think of NASA. But it just, if you go around and tell people like, what's the first word you think of if I say space? Most people will have these ideas. So what I'm saying is, you need to, first of all, people know that Hollywood is, most of the idea is, fake and all that. But what if NASA is another, big Hollywood soundstage, and away it goes? But again, that's harder for us to, conceive in our mind. And I would say, if you can crack the foundations of scientism and of NASA, this will go a long way in revealing the truth of the Bible. And this is absolutely not a distraction. And again, it's not for everyone. I'm not saying that everyone has to have a passion and a zeal to look into this. What I'm saying, though, is as a believer, you should have a passion to want to know the truth of God's word, that you're not making excuses for God's word based on what the authorities of our world have told you. And if you're clinging on to the authorities of this world, just be careful. Make sure that you can depend on them 100%. You had mentioned something before about, even other Christians out there, and authorities. And again, we all know that just because someone claims to be a Christian doesn't mean we have to take their word for it. So I would say it doesn't matter if they're a Christian astronaut or a atheist astronaut. The fact is, are you going to take an astronaut's word, or are you going to take the word of God? And again, you need to look at the Bible and you need to say, wait a minute, what does the Bible say? Now, as a person that believes in the Bible and takes all the words literal and everything, awesome. If you're watching this and you don't believe in that Bible or whatever, fine. Then you need to start looking at your authorities and your arbiter of truth, which is NASA, which is scientism. So again, go look into that, because if you're going to die, if you're going to go your whole life holding on to something that you believe to be true, make sure it's true. So all you have to do is say, what's the definition of truth through the scientific method? It's doing the experiments, it's observing, it's repeating, it's through the empirical method. If you look at it through truth lens, you have to see kind of what kind of foundation you're on. And I say this all the time. It's not about whether you want to look at the Bible or not, or this or that. If you're watching this show and you're rolling your eyes, or you're thinking this is absurd, fine. Whatever your arbiter of truth is, you have to look at, and you have to say, wait a minute, how do I know this is true? How do you know it's true? Is it because, your father, your mother told you? Is it because your teachers told you? How do you know it's truth? Again, these are the type of, things that we wrestle with. It's the same reason that, when I got into the Bible, I'm like, how do I know this is true? I don't want to just read a book. I don't want to believe in something that's not true. So for me, I don't just believe in the Bible. I know that it's the truth. That's how I know. And again, for me, it took a long time. I had to look into apologetics. I had to look into the proof. Why? If you look at it, there's more manuscripts that are dated the earliest of any manuscripts in the world. I mean, nobody debates the fact that Julius Caesar existed, yet there's very few manuscripts of Julius Caesar, and they're dated like thousands or hundreds or thousands of years after Julius Caesar. Well, if you look at the Bible, we're talking like maybe 100 years, like 50 years. If you start looking into this and applying this method, and you really are honest with yourself, look into it, because for the longest time I was the same way. I looked at the Bible, thought it was ridiculous, but what if it's not ridiculous? What if you started looking into it and found out that it was truth? And furthermore, it gets even more amazing when you start looking into the cosmology and you start getting into the scientism. What if even everything I believed that scientism had taught me about the origins of the universe and evolution, what if that is dispelled to be wrong because of the Bible? Do I believe it just because it's the Bible, or what if it could be proved? Well, that's the amazing thing, is if you start looking into creation versus evolution, or you start looking into, geocentrism versus heliocentrism, you're going to find that basically there is a lot of scientific proof coming forward that easily we could be stationary while the whole universe revolves around us, or vice versa. It could go either way. So if things are starting to point either way, well, you have this choice now. You could choose one or the other. But again, it's just a belief. How do you know something is the truth? And what I'm saying is that scientism have been involved in a scheme for a long time, hiding the truth from you, hiding the truth through this veneer of science. Well, scientists have discovered, we've discovered this, we have already done this. There's a lot of good scientists. And if you watch my movie, Scientism Exposed and Scientism Exposed To, you will see some really good, amazing scientists that have incredible work, and they're combating this system, but without, understanding that there is a cost. There's a cost coming out with a lot of this information, but it's intriguing. Like I said, there's more people coming to the Bible and to the true creator of creation than any other topic I've been involved with in over 20 years of my life, researching, reading the Bible, looking into all these different topics. I've never seen a more exciting time than this. Truly, God is waking up the world to the true creation of his world, and he's left you with a decision. Do you accept him or do you reject him?
I know whenever we do our shows that touch on this topic of cosmology, we've kind of sifted back into the terminology of here at Now You See TV, we're biblical earthers. And we're going to put our last stand of, what is it, our place of habitation is going to be defined by the Word of God. And so whatever we look at in there, whatever it says, that's where we're going to put our flag if that's what we believe. And I think that's important because so many people get caught up in titles and stuff like that. But it's so awesome that people are willing to just take a step back and be like, I might be wrong on this topic, as we are when it comes to many topics. And one thing that you had brought out a second ago that I wanted you to maybe expound on is the Nikon Coolpix P900. It's been given the term the flat earther camera, and I'd like you to maybe touch on why it has been given this term of calling it the flat earther camera recently.
Yeah, it just has an incredible zoom. I mean, it's a prosumer camera. I think it runs for about $500-600. And like I said, the incredible zoom on it. I think it's 83 times zoom on it. It's also got digital on there, so it can do unbelievable, zoom ins on pretty much anything. And that's the intriguing thing is getting into this investigation, looking into, are we on a spinning ball, this globe, is people have gone out with P900s and they've seen things clearly 60, 70, 80, 100 miles away. Well, if you start looking in the math based on the curvature math, at 8 inches per mile squared, based on the Pythagorean theorem, you're going to find some major problems. We should not be able to see these things at this distance. So I would say the P900 really opened up a world where we could start looking into things that we shouldn't normally be able to see. And, we've all been told the story about the ships, that go over the horizon. And that's how we were proved, that we're on this ball. And interesting enough, that was the number one way that, way back in history, they knew that, well, we must be on a ball, is because look at the ship goes over the horizon. Well, if you actually, you don't even need a P900. If you grab your cell phone, the minute that ship goes over the horizon, if you zoom in on it on your camera, you can bring that ship right back in focus. Now, if it disappears again, you could bring out a higher optics lens, bring that ship right back. So, this is the intriguing thing. You should not be able to bring something, back, that's down below the curvature. So, and this is the amazing thing, is if you start looking in the math based on the globe Earth that they've given us, and this is the scientific model, this is the scientific math. You should not be able to see these distances, yet we're seeing things. At I think it's at 80 or 90 miles away. It's 1.4 miles below the curvature of the Earth, yet we're seeing it. And we're not just seeing the tops of it, we're seeing the entire base of it. I mean, I think in New Zealand, if you look from the North Island to the South Island, you can see the entire base of that mountain. Well, these distances are absurd based on the models. Now, people will say, well, it's crazy if you don't think that we're on this ball. Well, go out and prove it. It should be very easy to go out and do a scientific experiment to prove the curvature. We're talking 8 inches per mile squared. What that means is every mile, it basically doubles, because again, you're going around a curve. So it's going to get steeper and steeper. Well, it should be very easy, incredibly easy to do this, but yet you cannot do this. And when I was saying before, when it comes to the scientific method, you cannot scientifically prove the movement of the Earth, and you can't scientifically prove the curvature of the Earth. Now, if you can do this, you'll be one of the most famous people ever to have lived. Again, it will be a huge deal. So I say this as a challenge for people that want to go out and debunk it. Come out with the experiment, you're going to be massively, hugely famous. You dispelled this, you proved once and for all through the scientific experiment. So if there's any of you out there that want to be mega famous, and I mean mega famous, prove it. And again, that goes for, if conclusively prove it. What we're finding is the otherwise opposite. What we're seeing based on the scientific experimentation, and again, there's a lot of people doing this work. And again, a lot of people, and I say this all the time, this topic is not just a religious topic. It's not just a conspiratorial topic. You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist. It's also a scientific topic. There's three groups of people that are coming to this topic of investigation. You've got religious people, you've got the scientific minded, and you've got conspiratorial minded. So when you start bringing all these three types of people together, you find some intriguing things. But there's a lot of great, amazing people that are doing experimentations all over the earth, and they're conclusively proving one thing: there is no curve. They can't find it. Where's the curve? I mean, you might have heard the thing, where's the curve? Where's the curvature? Where? It's like, we can't find it. Show us an experiment where we can find this, and maybe we would go away talking about the silly, two words, flat Earth. The idea of a flat Earth has been going on for a very long time. But in 2015, something really special happened. Not sure why 2015, but something did happen indeed. And people everywhere, this topic is exploding. We just, finished up the Flat Earth International Conference in Raleigh, North Carolina in November of last year. We have Denver planned, but that was the first time ever. And I mean, we had the media descending, we had scientists there, we had all sorts of different individuals, and people were coming in looking at this topic, investigating NASA, investigating the claims of scientism. And at the beginning, they're laughing at that and they're saying this is ridiculous. But one by one, they're saying this isn't ridiculous. As they went in their pursuit of truth, as they went in this investigation, they were led down an incredible path of discovering truth about their world and looking at the lies they had been taught through scientism and through NASA. And that's why I always combine scientism and NASA, is because scientism, has been linked very, very closely with NASA. And NASA is everything, all things space. And again, the moon landing. Look into the moon landing, because I would find that if you're talking to someone on this topic, find out where they are on the moon landing first. And if you're looking and you're kind of laughing at this topic as I talk right now, you probably believe they landed on the moon. And if you're watching the show and you know someone that you really want to talk about the curvature rates, or you want to talk about the reality of our world, find out where they are with the moon landing, because it's very important, especially if you're going from a conspiratorial type of view. If you're talking from a purely scientific view, then hit them with the science. Just hit them with the science. Say, well, prove it. You don't have to prove anything. They have to prove it to you. So prove it through the scientific experiment. Be calm, be comfortable, and go at it where you're saying, prove to me that we're on the spinning ball flying through space using the scientific method. Now, and if you're going based on the religious or the biblical, all you have to do is point people to the Bible and say, look, what do we do with this verse? Because if they don't want to look at a few verses, there'll be a certain verse that will come along and they'll say, yeah, I gotta think about that verse. Something's going on there, whether it's Joshua 10 or whether it's, on the firmament or something like this. So what I'm saying, there's three ways to come, across to people with this topic. And again, Scientism Exposed, why I put those films together, was a tool to reach these people based on science, based on the Bible, based on a conspiratorial, but on a very subtle kind of one-on-one level. Scientism Exposed, just very, very just skims the topic, gets people questioning. If they've watched that and they're wanting to go deeper, now you got Scientism Exposed To go a lot deeper and tell the story based on why they would lie and getting into this topic a lot more extensively. And I would say that for anyone, for Now You See TV, it's a great tool if you want to reach your loved ones or people on this topic, because the first one doesn't even mention flat Earth once, and I think the second only mentions it once and doesn't really mention it. Someone reading something off a NASA document, that NASA in their own documentation talk about a non-rotating flat Earth, and I won't spoil the surprise, but it's a NASA document, and you can look it up and see it at NASA yourself.
Yeah, I think that's so cool how you just kind of proposed that three-pronged attack. You can either go at it from, are they a conspiracy minded person who would be willing to reconsider the historical narrative? Are they scientifically minded? Are they going to hear the math? Or are they going to be biblically minded? Can you prove to them scripturally that there's something going on there in the narrative that we're not reconciling with modern science? And one of the reasons that I brought up that question about the Nikon Coolpix P900 is that so many people are like, well, this math, this science is so above my pay grade. I don't have the intelligence to do experimentation that could prove one way or the other. I don't have the technology that NASA has to be able to go and check stuff out. So what are you seeing some of the experiments that people are doing around the world? Not particularly just with the P900, but what are some things people are doing that are allowing them to actually do recreatable empirical science to challenge this topic?
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's high level laser experimentations that are currently on the way. I think there's one that's going to happen in Hungary in February. It's over a big body of water. And why I say water is because we all know that water finds its own level. And again, if you're looking at something across water, whether it's in a bathtub or a cup or a bowl, water always finds its level. We don't see this humped water anywhere. And again, if you're looking into the curvature math, we're supposedly on this big curved water ball, and what we're seeing is over water, when you're measuring, a distance, whether it's with a laser or the P900 or other, why water is so good is because you're looking at a level, distance across on both sides. And that's what we're seeing. Most people that are conducting experiments are trying it, definitely doing them over lakes, over bodies of water, because again, we know that water finds its own level. It helps with the experimentation. But there's a lot of things going on. There's experimentations going on when it comes to high, altitude, weather balloons, sending those up. And again, when you send up a high altitude weather balloon without a GoPro lens or a fisheye lens that distorts the image. I mean, most people know with the GoPro, you can clearly see there's a distortion there. It's called a fisheye lens. But when you actually put a straight lens on these things, all you're seeing is flat as far as the eye can see, and getting pretty high. I think the furthest, the record so far is about 120,000 feet. To give you perspective, a plane, most airliners fly at around 30 to 40,000 feet. And I guess based on the science and stuff like that, they'll say you can only see the curvature. 60,000 people say, "Hey, I was in a plane, I saw the curvature." No, you didn't, and you can look this up. So if you run into people that are like, You're stupid. Why don't you go in a plane? Have you ever flown in an airplane?" They're clearly not seeing it. It might be the windows that are curved, but even scientific definition is you cannot clearly see the curvature at 60 or 70,000 feet, which I find interesting because clearly you can see the curvature when that boat's going over the horizon, on the boat 3 miles away. So what is it, science? I can clearly see the curvature 3 miles away when I'm on a beach, but I can't see it in an airplane. But I digress. The high altitude weather balloons, up at 100 and 120,000 feet without a GoPro lens shows a flat horizon as far as the eye can see. When you're getting into, getting back into airplanes, when they fly, they have their instrumentation. And again, in order to actually not go into outer space and stay at a cruising altitude of 30 or 40,000 feet, you would have to constantly dip your nose every few miles. And yet pilots never do this. So if you look at a ball and you're on a plane, if you don't keep dipping, you can't go around the ball. But again, this is not what's happening. Now, they'll say this magical force, gravity, and we've heard all this stuff. But again, you're looking at this atmosphere that's connected to a vacuum without a physical barrier. How does that happen? A vacuum will suck up the atmosphere. Yet all these definitions fall under scientism. And yet, whenever they don't really have an answer, what I find very intriguing is they have their magic G. Gravity. Hey, how does that work? Gravity. Hey, how does that work? Gravity, gravity, gravity. Gravity is the most unscientific thing there is. It's never been measured. It's never been tested. It's never been seen. It's never been, quantified through the scientific experimentation. If you talk to 5 different scientists, they'll give you 5 different definitions on what gravity is. Look it up on Wikipedia. It doesn't even make sense. So what I'm saying is, if they're going back to gravity, the most unscientific term there is, we have major problems. We've veered away from the true scientific definition of a scientific experimentation through the scientific method, empiricism, getting into these ideas, and we're moving away. Experiments that are being done using the scientific method, however, are starting to prove the reality of our world and dispel a lot of the lies that we've been taught. And it's a fantastic time to be alive because our technology is getting to a point where every one of us can be our own scientist. That's the beauty thing, is you don't need a degree. Every one of us can be scientists. We can go out and we can prove our world using the scientific method, because science is good, scientism is not.
Excellent. And a lot of people are going to be shocked about what you were mentioning about the big G, gravity. But I understand that there's other scientific models coming out in relation to electromagnetic attraction and stuff like that. Do you have any information on these other models that are coming out to challenge the current gravitational model?
There's lots. I would say anyone that's interested in this topic, I mean, I would watch on, I believe, on Sundays at 1 p.m. Mountain or Pacific. Anyways, it's on YouTube. It's called Globebusters, and it's a fantastic show. It's probably one of the most popular shows when it comes to this topic. Bob Nodell runs that show. Jaron's on there, and a few others. You get to see a lot of different viewpoints, but also a lot of different models that are being proposed. Thunderbolts project, electromagnetic. When you got into talking about, there are actually explained, and using the scientific model, getting into a lot of science, they're starting to see things that do make sense when it comes to dispelling myths such as gravity. Understand that the only reason gravity even exists is because this notion that we're on a flying ball, we're on a spinning ball flying through space. You don't really need that. I mean, the idea that things fall that are heavier than the things that they're in. For example, when you get into air, something that falls, down is heavier than the air that it's in. It's denser than air. So when you're getting into all these things, buoyancy, density, when you're getting into electromagnetism, when you're getting into all these concepts, that's what I'm saying, is most people don't want to veer out there. They're almost scared to. They're like, no, 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 science proved it. Why don't you just go out and just start looking at different models? You might be surprised at what you find. But every one of these models, what I find very intriguing is every one of these other models, and there's quite a few of them, they're all pointing to a creator. None of them are getting us this random Big Bang accident. You're just an accident through an explosion. They all have purpose. They all have intelligence. That's the intriguing thing here. The common denominator between scientism and every other type model when it comes into our world uh, is one has a purpose, one has intelligence, right? The other, and again, this is what we're seeing all the time is with all these models is there's intelligence and purpose. With the other one, however, the agenda of the world and the way the world is moving, it's purposeless. It's void of any type of decent, structure when it comes to an intelligence. And really, if there is any intelligence behind it, that intelligence is backed by an evil creator. And that's what I say with a lot of people that were looking at the Big Bang cosmology and attaching God to it. They were desperately trying to find intelligence in it. And that's what I find intriguing about this topic is because Lucifer, Satan, was behind putting this whole thing together, there would be little traces of intelligence in there if you went really looking for it. If you're like a Bible believer and you're like, yeah, but God used the Big Bang to create us all, and you looked into it deep, looking for a creator, you would find intelligence. And the minute you found an intelligence behind that model, you'd be like, see there, God created it. I can see intelligence there, whether it's this or that. So I find it intriguing that have we for a long time been finding intelligence behind something? The question is, who is that intelligence? Because we know through the Bible that Lucifer is very intelligent. So therefore, would there be intelligence behind it? So what I'm saying is, for the people that went desperately looking, including myself, when I was looking into Big Bang cosmology, I'm like, whoa, look at how the universe works, and it's all in sync, and it's moving through gravity. I was looking for intelligence, but it was only when you're looking for it. It covered all the rest of the people that didn't want to even believe in God, because it was absurd to think that there'd be any intelligence behind a random accident explosion that happened 18, billion, years ago. And these are the ideas. We're hearing billions and trillions and these numbers that we can't even get our head around. And that's what that throws us off, is they can basically get us with these numbers where we're like, oh, I can't even think of that number. It's so big. Just let them have it. And we have to be really careful on this, because there's a lot of deceptions in this world. And I want to expose every one of them, especially ones when it comes to scientism and NASA. And that's what I've been doing for the last 3 years.
Now, I'd like to get into FE 2017, because you said earlier that this is absolutely going on in dozens of different countries. People are waking up to this as a worldwide movement, and it's very interesting, because people came to this conference in Raleigh, North Carolina, and there was it basically blew up into the mainstream. And I'd like you to maybe talk about the conference, what you saw there, and how the mainstream media reacted to all these flat earthers showing up and hosting a widely popular conference that sold out. And talk a little bit about FE 2017.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, organizing and getting everything together for, FEIC 17 in Raleigh, it was just an amazing opportunity. And I had been talking with the media leading up to it. And if you've looked at the news, you've seen a lot more news coverage. There's like sports celebrities that have come out and different people talking about this topic. And these are people that are, sitting on a plane, watching videos, reading into it, and at first probably laughing at it, but then looking into the evidence, going, wait a minute. And I think you're going to see a lot more people coming out in 2018. But what was amazing with the media's reaction was, at one point it was just some crazy people on the internet. But what they saw there is they saw so many different people of different beliefs and backgrounds, coming together on a wide, level, and getting into the topics that were discussed. And I mean, there was, BBC was there, and CBS and ABC, and Vice News from HBO. There was a lot of coverage, and there will continue to be a lot of coverage, because again, this is one of the most absurd things people can think about in one breath. And part of the media's approach at the beginning, and I'm saying 2015, 2016, was, to ridicule it, laugh at it, think it's ridiculous. But I'm seeing a transition happen where they're getting very curious. They're wanting to document it, and they're saying, wait a minute, something must be going on, because we can't put everyone in a box. We can't just say these are a bunch of Bible believers. We can't just say these are a bunch of nut job conspiracy theorists. They're seeing very intelligent people come forward that are just looking at the scientific method. They're seeing people that believe in the Bible, but they're also seeing, conspiratorial crowd, and they're seeing, people that represent all three. So they're saying, wait a minute, like, we can't really put everyone just in one box, which the media love to do. They love to just put you in. They love to just say it's a cult. But then again, it has no leader. There's no like singularity leader. There's no, even one type of model. I personally don't even have a specific model. Again, I'm a biblical earther, like you had said. I look at the Bible to represent closely what I believe, would be going on. But there's a lot of different theories out there, and that's what was represented at the Flat Earth International Conference in Raleigh in November. Was different people, different beliefs coming together, but understanding that they have been lied to on a mass scale when it came to scientism and NASA. And going forward, and putting things together for 2018 in Denver, I mean, it's going to be 3 times the size. And it's going to be incredibly able to transition, not just being online and social media and YouTube, but coming together and meeting face to face. So that was a really beautiful part of it. You were there, Jake. You had a great time, and everyone was, there, in that community and meeting people for the first time. So we weren't just faces on a computer or names. We became real people. And I would urge anybody that's, sitting on the fence or haven't been out to, a conference, especially on this topic, it's a wonderful opportunity. Even to come as a skeptic, you'll be able to talk to other skeptics, if that are there. But what's amazing is you're going to get a lot of very, very smart presentations, people coming together, and just this amazing community. And you'll find that these people are all good-hearted. They're all wanting to know the truth, and they're saying we don't all have the answers, and we're all doing these experimentations to find out. But the one common denominator that was just absolutely amazing that was there, in Raleigh, was that everyone were creationists. And what I mean by that is everyone believed that they were trying to hide God. And I found that incredible because the majority of these people that really weren't, Bible believers or even believed in God, a year ago, instantly now they are. Now they're picking up these books. Now they're looking into this, content a lot more. So what I'm saying with this topic is bringing a lot of people instantly to the idea of a creator, to the idea of intelligence, looking into our world. This topic is not going away. It's going to get stronger and stronger. It's going to get bigger and bigger. We're going to see bigger names coming out. 2018, it'll be amazing to see who comes out with this topic. Hopefully, they'll be in Denver at the conference. And for any of you that are interested, in the conference, you can go to fe2018.com, just fe2018.com. You can see all the information. Tickets are already on sale. They're already selling well, and the early bird's on. And it's all the way in November, but again, it goes quick. We did that last year. We launched 2017's conference in February, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's so far away," and then instantly it was there. So it will come around quick. It's going to be an exciting year. I've got lots of things planned personally, but also, getting a lot of things prepped for the Flat Earth International Conference 2018. It's going to be an amazing time. Just as it was an amazing time in Raleigh at the Flat Earth International Conference 2017. So come out if you can. Get your tickets. Rooms are available as well. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm absolutely excited for this 2018 conference in Denver. First of all, I think Denver is an awesome place. Me and John went to visit there a couple months back, and I'd love to go back. And especially the community that I met at FEIC 2017. It was so friendly. Everybody wanted to talk and understand, why are you looking into this topic? What brought you into this particular movement? Because it was so diverse. There are so many reasons that people are starting to look into this. Like you said, you had the three-pronged attack. Well, you have people coming from all different directions. And that kind of brings to mind another question I wanted to ask you. Whenever we look at this flat Earth topic, we understand that heliocentric cosmology, the Big Bang cosmology, is really only about 500 years old. Of course, there were some, early forerunners with Pythagoras, but as a majority, the whole world believed the Earth was flat until about the 1500s. And so we see this flat Earth cosmology with Norse religion, Egyptian religion, Assyrian religion, the ancient Hebraic biblical perspective. And that brings to mind another topic that I wanted to ask you about is there seems to be a lot of people that are coming into this movement that are not Christians, that are pushing a very heavily New Age, mystic kind of mindset. And so, what are your thoughts on that? Because we saw, I met a lot of people at the conference who were absolutely not Christians and not Bible believers, but they were coming into this flat Earth cosmology realization. And so if the goal of Christians that use scripture to kind of point people to, hey, if the earth is flat, then that means we are created. How do you approach people who are coming at it from a different religious or faith perspective, and point them to the truth of the gospel?
I think, the Bible is the number one way, really, because again, a lot of these people, whether they're, New Age or into different belief systems, they're still looking at the Bible. They're kind of looking at everything. I would say that, people that are coming to this topic are willing to investigate everything in their life, right? So I would say that if someone was like New Age, and then all of a sudden they discover that NASA lied to them and that science is wrong, because that's what I told you at the beginning of the broadcast, is scientism or scientific worldview shapes every one of us, whether we're Buddhist or Christian or atheist, or it doesn't matter. We all have a scientific worldview. And that's why I think this topic is so important, is because it doesn't really matter what your belief system is. So if you're, in the New Age philosophy, before, you look into this topic and realize that you've been lied to, well, now you've come into it, but you're still kind of New Age. You've dropped NASA, you've dropped scientism, but you're still New Age, right? So again, I think it takes a while to kind of, it's not like you're looking at this wanting to find out if New Age was a lie. New Age is like a different category, right? Because again, you're looking at science and empirical and proof and NASA, and this is the reality. This is like agencies. It's almost like it's like 9/11. It's like you could be a Muslim and you look into 9/11, you're still Muslim after you looked into 9/11 and realized it was bad, right? And that Satan runs the world. Even Muslims believe that, Satan's bad and he runs the world. So what I'm saying is it doesn't really change your religion at first, but where we have the greatest opportunity is to get into the truth. They're all hungry to discover the truth. And as we know, in John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. He made these extraordinary claims that he was the only way. Jesus said all these things. Well, how do we know that he is the right way? How do we know he is the truth? He is the Messiah. These are the type of topics we can kind of get into. But I find that it doesn't matter what literature it is, whatever belief system is, there's no other book that has more concrete, detailed evidence on the creation of this earth. So I would say that, especially you brought up New Age, they have no book. They have no book. They just have like a belief system. So they have no really arbiter of truth. They have that as their secondary spiritual belief, but they don't really have something to lean on. So I think that just having people and having the opportunity to, sit there, for example, at the conference, these people still sat in on biblical presentations. So it's a wonderful opportunity because again, you're with a lot of different people, different mindsets, but they're willing to sit in and hear what the Bible has to say about how the earth was created or how scientism is lying to us. So what I'm saying is there's a lot of opportunity, and I think I've seen it myself, being able to talk to a lot of people about the gospel, about the Bible, about the truth. And really when it comes to belief systems, it doesn't matter what we believe in, it matters what's the truth. And we know that when it comes down to the Bible, this is the truth. It's hard sometimes for people because again, the Bible's got a bad name, religion's got a bad name, and really you got to break down these ideas because again, most people are not hesitant to look at the Bible. They're hesitant about a religion. They're hesitant about Christianity. They're hesitant about church. They're hesitant about, these are the words that everyone just goes, right? But again, these never started off as bad terms. They just got yucky over time. So what I would say is when you're getting into these ideas, it's you're in a position to be able to let God speak through you. And I look at it just as a wonderful opportunity to preach the gospel, to talk about the Bible, to talk about, these people sat in on the world premiere of Scientism Exposed To. Every one of them watched it. They came to me afterwards and talked about it because that content's in there. It's stuff that they're seeing that they believe in, exposing scientism, exposing NASA. They're receptive to this message. Remember, sometimes when we're talking and we're sharing the gospel, sometimes people have to be receptive, first of all. So if you're already aligned with certain things that they're already passionate about and they're already supportive about, they're already open to hearing about other things. And you have those opportunities. So you don't have to like bash them over the head with it, but you can, be in their life and you can talk to them. And I know many, many people that have reached out to me, questions going deeper into the Bible, that maybe, even bigger names on YouTube that really haven't shared it on their channel yet, but they're definitely talking, behind the scenes. So God is moving, God's working with this topic. I think this is one of the biggest ways I've seen more people jump on the side of defending creationism, and they're not even Bible believers yet, and yet they're on our side. So what I say is whether they're not, on our side or they're not Bible believers yet, they're still on our team. They're still fighting the scientists. Before 10 years ago, me fighting evolution, it was just me. It was creationists, just me and a bunch of Christians. We had no help. Now we have all these people helping to fight the good fight. So I find it very intriguing. It's almost like God is waking people up. They're not even aware of it yet. And I say this a lot of times. I'll say this even with certain people that are in, this community. I'll say, you know what, you're being used, you don't even know it yet. You're part of this grand plan. And that's what's so amazing is he's waking people up regardless whether you're on his side or not. He's waking people up to the true reality of creation. And I go back to Romans, and it's very important. Romans makes it very clear that the number one way that people know that the true creator of creation exists is through creation. It says it right in Romans. So that's the number one way that you're going to hire creation, through creation. And that's what Satan has done. He's distorted, he's lied, and the only way that he can get power in your life is you believe in those lies. He can't distort reality. What we see is what we see, but we can believe someone that's saying, no, what you're seeing is not true. we're actually on something completely different. Oh, so I say that all the time, is his only power is not to distort reality, is to basically tell you lies, or have authorities come in your life or be presented in front of you telling you that what you see with your five senses isn't true. What you sense with your senses, and also what you read in the Bible. No, no, no. Those people were ignorant. This is the truth. Listen to us. It's like that lie right from the Garden of Eden. Did God say? No, no, no. He didn't mean it that way. It wasn't meant that way. He starts off subtle. He won't even attack the Bible. He'll just say, no, no, no. It was never meant to be literal. That was just meant to convey a story. And he's very subtle. And he's done this through scientism. He's done this through NASA. He's done this through Hollywood. He's done it through all these agencies. But it comes down to just believing this lie. Are we going to stand for the truth, or are we going to fall for lies?
Yeah, I mean, and this end times that we're living in, many people postulate that we're very close to the second coming. And if there is a great deception, there's going to be a lot of lies to go along with that. And so everything we can do to build a foundation on truth, I think, is very important for anyone. And of course, we'd hope that that would draw people towards biblical truth. And I think it's very awesome that during the FEIC 2017 conference, you had Bible believing Christians being presenters up there, sharing their faith and why their faith in the Bible is also what led them into a faith and into an understanding of the flat Earth. So let's go ahead and get into some questions tonight. And the first question we have coming in is, hello. Why are there so many scientists and geniuses on this planet that nobody realized that the Earth was flat? And for more than 500 years, the whole world has been deceived, even now. So basically, if there's so many geniuses, so many scientists, how has this monolithic conspiracy been perpetuated?
Well, again, I think this is a spiritual, deception. So therefore, this has been perpetuated based on the fact of the world's wisdom. And again, it's been you mentioned there's so many smart people, but understand that the world's wisdom is, God laughs at it. He thinks it's ridiculous. He says, I think it's foolish. So again, we have to be careful when we're saying, the wisdom of the world and the intelligence of what we've learned here, because if you read the Bible, He's got another way of looking at it. And I would say that really it's not the fact that anything was detrimental if you didn't know. It's almost based on timing. It's almost for a long time, people believed in evolution. And then great creation ministries came forward and started being brave enough to tackle this topic and start breaking down the lies of evolution and showing, wait a minute, we need to go back to a literal understanding. It is literal. We had veered away from it. If you look into history, the same way, it's almost like God's waking up the world to show, like, look how far we've veered off looking at the reality of our world when it comes to origins, when it comes to the earth. So I think little by little, it's almost like waking people up and saying, here you go, here's the reality. What are you going to do with this knowledge? So the question is not how did all these people go, it's what's happening now. All these people that are waking up, all these intelligent people, all around the world that are waking up, what's going on? They're all starting to wake up to this one thing that we've been lied to about the world. The world's not moving. It's not a spinning ball flying through space. And yet every one of them are coming to the conclusion that there is a creator, that I was created special. And again, we're talking hardcore atheists here. We're talking people of every spectrum that you can think of. And they're all coming to the common denominator of the fact that we were created, there is a creator. And I find that fantastic. And again, if you want to look at the fruit of this topic, how many people, and I mean, you just have to type in flat earth testimonies or flat earth gospel, or there's so many people that are getting saved that are coming to the truth of the Bible, the gospel, based on the fact of this investigation. The number is staggering if you start looking at it. Talk to different people that are running different ministries with this topic, and you'll find that so many people are coming to this topic, and they're coming to the truth through this. So I would say it's an amazing time. Look into it. Look at the Bible. Why was it written that way? Could it be that it's literal? Could it be that the sky is blue because there's water above us? Could it be that simple? I mean, we say that to children, why is the sky blue? Why is the sky blue? If you get into the scientific definition, and it can't even be scientifically proven, it's a theory. Again, they talk about water particles and mist in the air and all these other things. But could it be as easy as the fact that there's water above us, like the Bible says? People are starting to look and they're starting to find the answers.
Fascinating. Our next question comes in and is asking, Robbie, I heard you say that before that you don't think this is a salvation issue when we consider it is those who believe in the globe model that it will be taken in by the Great Deception. Uh, would you what do you consider on your position with this being a salvation issue? Because if this is tied to the Great Deception and people will be led into that deception based on this, isn't it an important issue and very possibly something that could affect people's salvation?
I would say it's important, but again, I would definitely take the stand that it's not salvational. And when I said that the Great Deception, I've never once said that this topic is the Great Deception. What I've said, however, is that the Great Deception, you will believe it easier if you have a scientific worldview. But I would never go so far as to believe that my brothers and sisters in Christ, because they believe in a heliocentric model, they're deceived, they're going to hell, they're damned. None of this. So no, I don't believe that it's salvational. I do believe it's important, just like anything else. When we talk about the truth is important, but there is like different levels. When we're getting into the gospel, that's, fundamental. John 14:6, fundamental. That's salvational. You're getting into John 14:6. I am the way, the truth, and life. There is one way to the Father. That's it. Is that, salvational? Absolutely. But there's a lot of things in the Bible that aren't salvational. They're incredibly important, but you can't take them as a salvational point. So understand, hopefully I was clear enough. When I talk about the Great Deception, most of my interviews, I say that I don't believe that this topic is the Great Deception. But what I'm saying is I believe that a scientific worldview will help believe this lie more. So let's just say, for example, I believed in a heliocentric Big Bang universe. I still didn't believe in aliens. I still believe they were demonic. So what I'm saying is, I don't believe that Christians are going to be deceived because, for example, there's a lot that basically, if aliens appeared and said, "We're your creators," I think a lot of Christians would be like, "Yeah, I'm not believing that," or they would already be on the train of thought that aliens were demonic or they were demons or they're fallen angels or they're watchers or whatever. So what I'm saying is, there's already a camp out there that wouldn't be deceived. But what I'm saying is, there's a lot of people out there that if you add that and then you add the whole, globe that came from another planet, and it just amplifies things. And it's almost like, yes, we know that aliens, are alive. But I think, for myself, for the longest time, I started looking into the universe and going, well, maybe God has created other planets out there and other life forms. I don't believe they come to us, and they would have to be pro God because sin never came to their planet. And, Jesus died once and for all, for our planet. You know what I mean? So he's not going and dying for other sinful planets. So we read in the Bible that we're the only ones, we're the pinnacle. So let's just say that there were other life forms out there. They must commune, they must see and walk with God, kind of like Adam and Eve in the garden or whatever. So they would never interfere with us. But the likelihood that God created other planets or other beings, yeah, it's pretty probable because we're told there's billions of other planets. So I have to go with this, right? So what I'm saying is, as I have a scientific worldview, now I'm playing the Bible into that worldview. What if you scrapped your whole scientific worldview and you just went biblical speaking and saying, there's nothing else. There's just us. And everything in the sky is lights. It's not habitable. It's not terra firma that we can land on and play golf on and drive a rover around on. They're lights in the sky. The sun, moon, and stars are lights. They do different things. They're there for certain, the stars were created for times and seasons. I mean, we're told in the Bible what they're there for: one to rule the night, one to rule the day. Very, very self-explanatory. Why do we have to start thinking that they're there, as asteroids or star systems? But again, scientism have moved in because they need this narrative in order to deceive us, not so much for the coming deception, to keep us away from God. So what I'm saying is, it's not salvational in the sense that if you're already basically clinging on to the Bible already, you're good. You're good. But you're just not as sold out maybe as someone else. For example, someone that goes out and preaches the gospel every day, you're not bad if you don't preach the gospel every day. You might have a different technique. Maybe God's calling you to do a different thing. That's your thing. But someone, it's almost like, it's like a reward system. I honestly believe there is like a reward system in the sense that there's higher end of rewards. For example, martyrs, I think they'll have a higher end of a reward system. We're all equal in heaven, but I think that we'll be assigned different tasks based on what we achieved here on earth. So we're all loved, we're all equal in heaven, but don't think that the one person that just kind of sat around and did nothing, is going to be in charge of something, in heaven. Somebody else might be. It's like think of an army. They're going to have generals and you're going to have soldiers. You're going to have, you have a different ranking system. So it's almost like what you want to do. And I want to stand on the word of God, every single word. That's what I want to do. If someone doesn't want to do that, it's fine. It's not like they're damned to hell if they don't. They're just there on their walk. Maybe, another 10 years they'll get there. I wasn't on this topic until what happened with all those other 20 years. They were maybe preparing me for this time. So I say we have to be really careful. Where is someone in their walk? They might not be where we're at. Let God lead you who to talk to. They will come to you. If you actually pray and allow the Holy Spirit to actually lead people to you, you will find the people that are receptive. They're the ones that want to know about NASA. They're the ones that want to know about the Bible. So go on that guidance rather than us trying to go out and trying to, prove or trying to, teach everyone everything. Just basically, if you do this in your life, you'll find that out of those 10 people that you really care about and you're praying about, that one person you'll be focused on, and you'll spend that attention and that time on that one person, and they'll be receptive and they'll want to listen. The other nine will laugh at you. They'll laugh at you. You bring up this topic. So why would you even focus on that right now? Focus on that one person that's willing to go on that journey and get up to that point. And having resources like Scientism Exposed or other good YouTube channels and stuff, get that information as long as they want it. And again, if the idea is to lead them to the truth and the truth of the gospel, this is a great idea, man. It's amazing. And again, I've never seen a topic, it's laughed at, yes, but there are so many people that aren't laughing at all. They're like, wow, I'm looking into this topic like crazy. So don't focus on the people that are laughing at you. Focus on the people that are like, whoa, yeah, I don't believe they landed on the moon. If you're talking to someone that's not a Christian and believes they don't land on the moon, you've got a total opportunity here to like blow their mind. And you don't know the ripple effect. You don't know that one person you talk to, what they end up doing. I mean, it took one person in my life to talk to me about the gospel, and here I am, being interviewed on Now You See TV, talking about documentaries I'm making, you know uplifting the Bible and looking down on scientism. And yet I believed in science with all my life, my early years of my life. Never did I think I would be doing this and reaching millions of people with my YouTube channel. And yet one person talked to me. One person was brave enough to talk to me. And that's what I say is just find that one person, talk to. It's all about one person at a time.
How exciting. And I totally agree with what you're saying. I think, many people are on different parts of their journey on their walk with God. We're all growing, and one person might not be ready for this particular truth yet. They might be holding on to some preconceived notions, but we're all going to be. Everything's going to be revealed in the end. All truth
There's a
is
lot
going
of
to be.
truth. There's a lot of
Yeah.
truth. If you're actually to write down all the truths, that's a lot to get through in your life. You got to pick a few and
Oh
say,
yeah.
okay, these 100 I'll focus on in my life, but I can't focus on these 10,000. There is a lot of truths. So what truth are you passionate about? And I say this all the time. I'm passionate about this. I want to talk to people that are passionate too. But don't look down on someone if you're passionate about a certain topic and they're not. We love to highlight topics that we're passionate about. Understand there's a lot of truth out there. And it's like people need to be reached with the truth, but the ultimate truth is reaching people with the gospel. And however you do it, however your method or whatever truth you use to get to the ultimate truth, use that. But don't start hitting people over the head with it and say they have to believe that truth in order to believe the ultimate truth, because that's not entirely truthful.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't want to divide over topics because we all have, what God's calling us to trumpet, and we need to just follow His leading. And so our next question coming in is, Robbie, my worldview has long been that Tesla is right. Everything is light, and there are no planets, and everything that we have been shown is just CGI animation from NASA. Everything we can see above us is inside the firmament, just as the Bible says. What are your thoughts on the Tesla mathematics and Nikola Tesla in general, and some of the research he's done?
I mean, I think it's fascinating. There's a lot of different theories. Again, I look at it as far as looking in the Bible, the idea that we're like CGI, we're a simulation. I mean, I think we're pretty much real. I mean, if you pinch yourself, you're real. And people could say, well, that could be simulated and all this. I think there's a lot of sci-fi out there, when they're getting into AI and stuff like that, that are trying to show us that at some point we're going to have artificial intelligence so sophisticated that, they can feel all the emotions, that they're going to, surpass humans. And the reality is, I don't believe that God created us in such a way to create stuff that would actually supersede us. So the idea, even computers, I mean, people are, whoa, wow, technology, computers are amazing. Computers aren't even like even a fraction of a percent as sophisticated as a blood cell. Okay, let alone the human brain. So this idea that whoa, we're close to being taken over, and there's going to be intelligence that takes us over. So the idea that when it gets into simulations and stuff, these are neat ideas. I personally don't agree, that we're a simulation. I think it's fascinating stuff, though. The idea that we could all be just in a computer somewhere, that nothing is real. The idea, what I would say is the simulation, getting into the universe. I think, yes, that has been a simulation that Satan has sold us the idea that there's billions and trillions of galaxies. So the simulation that there's trillions and billions of galaxies, that's just a lie. So that's a kind of a simulation. So I do a kind of a reverse type simulation in the fact of like getting into NASA and scientism, everything they teach us with Big Bang cosmology, and they tell us everything that's out there with the Hubble telescope. That's a simulation. It's a lying simulation of the mind, but it's almost like Satan's reality. I always looked at like, in order to create something, if the creator is creating something, what are the like the adjectives to describe it? And when we get into like hell and Hades and Satan and Lucifer, we get into some interesting adjectives. We get into like, first of all, it talks about it, there's no light, and you're talking about light. So it's pitch black. There's no light. It's void. It's a vacuum. It's dark. It's black. And I'm looking at these adjectives and I'm like, these are interesting adjectives. Void, black, dark. Vacuum, nothing. I'm like, oh, this is an interesting reality that's being shown us. And if that's the reality of our world, that it's nothing, that God created the reality of the majority of everything that we know that exists in the universe is a vacuum. It's nothing. That seems a little strange. It seems almost like something like the opposite, the imitator, the adversary would do. He's colorful, bright, beautiful. Satan would be dark, nothing, void of anything. So what I look at when it comes to different theories, I look at them. If they line up with the Bible, I think, hey, great. Who am I? I don't know. I don't have all the answers. So I wouldn't say that you're wrong. Again, these are personal interpretations that we all can have. Again, if they line up with the Bible and they line up with a biblical worldview, then I think they're worthy of discussion and looking into and pursuing, as long as they lead us back to that truth. Because if they lead us further away, then I would say that we need to take out that theory and look into another one in order to bring us back to the truth of the Bible.
And just to clarify, I think they were just referring to the stuff NASA puts out on planets being CGI. I don't know if they were coming from the position of we are all a CGI, it's all a hologram. Okay. But I do know there are people out there who absolutely have that worldview, and it's
sure. And if we're talking about planets being CGI and stuff like that, I mean, I believe that everything that we see in the sky is real. Just like God created it, it's real. The stuff that they show us that are, a billion light years away or, another galaxy, that's all CGI. Yes. All the stuff that they're showing us in their magical telescopes, yes, it's all renderings. It's all paint jobs. I mean, we never got to talk about this in the interview, but just the reality that you cannot find any real photographs of the Earth from space, that should make people scratch their head. Why is it? It's 2018. We still don't have an HD video footage of the spinning Earth from space. Why not just put it right on the moon? We got there, no problem, there and back, in the 60s and 70s. Go put a 24-hour feed. You could have Coca-Cola, you could have Amazon sponsor it, massive sponsorship opportunity, make millions of dollars in advertising revenue. Just show our spinning Earth 24/7. Beautiful. Case closed, right? Doesn't exist, won't exist, doesn't exist. So these are the type of things that we need to look at. And the reality is that, yes, going back to CGI, this is what they're showing us, and it's really crappy CGI, to tell you the truth. When you start looking at it, it's like they're not even trying to actually show us, because so many people have the cognitive dissonance, but they've also been indoctrinated so deeply that they don't have to show us. They could show us a plasticine model of the Earth and we'd be like, yeah, it looks pretty real, because again, why debate it? Why debate it? And these are the type of things they're showing us. I mean, and again, we laugh at plasticine, but they showed us the moon, the other side of the moon going across the Earth. I think it was in 2016. They showed us the stop motion, and honestly, it looks like plasticine. It looks like something my daughter would put together with clay, and it looks ridiculous. Yet people put that, in all the articles. NASA put it out as official NASA footage of the other side of the moon, and you can see the moon going across, and there's major problems with it. So it's like they're not even trying. So yeah, CGI, plasticine, a lot worse going on for sure.
And I know a lot of people who've been pointing their Coolpix P900s up at planets and planetary bodies. They're seeing some really weird stuff. Some like, just look up some videos of people who've been zooming in on these things. It's very crazy. And one of the big things that made me really start to think about this topic was just the blatant fact there is no single photograph of the planet Earth. There are composite images, but there's not a single photograph of Earth. Of all the instrumentation and stuff they've sent off into space and off into these other planets, they couldn't have one of those rockets that had a camera pointing our direction and to take a picture as they were taking off, and they'll freely admit it. It's all composite images because they don't have the ability to take a photograph. So just very interesting. Encourage you guys. After this episode, if you're not a flat earther, just do some research. Just check out why people are. What has forced other people's hands into this topic, and you'll have your mind blown. I guarantee it. We have two more questions, and the next one is, what do you think about Nibiru as the Assyrian, the fallen seraphim, that is in a quote in Isaiah 13:5 says, "They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord, and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land." So I guess your opinion on Planet X and Nibiru and what you think there.
That was kind of one of the biggest like revelations, and it startled me, is because I'd done a lot of investigations, on Planet X and Nibiru and all these type of things, and getting into aliens and planets and space. And when you come to enclosed cosmology or biblical Earth or however you want to deem it, everything goes away. There is no Planet X. There is no Nibiru, in the sense that everything that we see in the sky are lights. There are no planets. Now, again, some people say, "Well, that's crazy. I've seen planets. What you've seen is lights." Now, again, if you're going to take NASA out of the picture and grab your P900 and zoom up at Mars or whatever and look at seeing what you do. Now, read the Bible and find out, other than sun, moon, and stars, find out any references. There is no references. Planet actually is a very, very new word. It was actually wandering stars. So if there's wandering stars and there's regular stars, that gets a little bit more intriguing. You talk about these other bodies and living attributes to them and stuff like this. So when you start looking into your cosmology, when you start looking at this topic and looking into the Bible, it takes out all this notion of them hiding, Nibiru or Planet X. And again, remember the whole idea of them coming and seeding us and all these sort of things. It plays in the Anunnaki, tales and all these sort of things. Again, they're coming from heaven. They're coming, from all these different vantage points. Where if you look at basically the way it's deemed and where it's set up, it is Satan that wants to ascend above the stars. His pursuit is to do this. Is the illusion of progress for man, and it's man going up. And there's speaking of Isaiah, there's a great verse talking about that he has given dominion. He's given like dominion of the earth to men, but of the heavens it's the Lord's. It says he hasn't given any dominion to man for the heavens. It's the earth. So I say this all the time, that this idea of NASA and going to the star systems and all these sort of things, it's all sci-fi. It's all science fiction. It does not exist. And again, if people want to say, well, yeah, it does, and then find the proof. And again, we're going back to the moon landing. We're going back to where exactly have they been. Now, if they hypothetically have not been to the moon, and these are for people that are sitting on the fence or they believe they landed on the moon, but if in your investigation you find out, no, I don't believe they went on the moon, I don't think they've gone to the moon, then if they haven't gone to the moon, how far can they go? They certainly can't go anywhere else further, right? They could maybe go a little closer, but the fact is they haven't been to the moon. Therefore, where have they gone and how far can they go? Getting back to the firmament, maybe we put in a place where we can't even get high enough to measure the entire thing. I know it seems absurd. What about all those satellites? And maybe for another show we'll get into that. But the idea that in Job it says that who of you could measure the breadth of the earth? Like God's basically saying that none of you can even measure the distance of the earth. Yet scientism tells us the width and the dimensions and all these sort of things. On the other hand, if you read the Bible, it says no one can even measure the breadth of the earth. Well, wait a minute. That should be fairly easy to do if we're on the ball and we can go out with satellites and see the whole thing. But the idea that this is all science fiction, we can't even measure it. So my personal belief, it is my personal belief, we can't even get high enough to see the entire thing. That's how vast and how amazing and how big this earth is. And like, try to think of this thing through. How high do you have to get to see the entire thing? So when you calculate that distance, figure that distance out. And what you're going to find out very intriguing is you have to get very, very, very far away to see the entire thing in its entirety. I don't believe NASA or any space agency for that matter can get that high. Look up the Van Allen radiation belts, look up distances, why they've only gone, supposedly 400 miles. I don't think they've even gone that far, but let's just take them at their word, say they've gone 400 miles. That's weird. 50 years have gone by. They've only gone 400 miles. Yet in the 60s and 70s, they went 250,000 miles away, there and back, no problem, through the Van Allen radiation belts. So what I'm saying is a lot of the stuff that we're learning, a lot of the stuff that we've been taught, is nothing more than lies. It doesn't exist. And if you really want to hold on to it because you love space so much, which a lot of us did, oh, but space, I mean, it's fun. It's great. Star Wars, Star Trek. It's hard to let go, but when you let go, you will see the Bible, you will see the creation account for what it truly is. It will open up the Bible in so many ways. And I just say to people all the time, hypothetically, just try it. Try it as an experiment. See what it does. What are you scared of? Are you scared of, being sucked into the flat earth or the biblical earth hole? I mean, just try it and see what happens. But you will find the most amazing freedom you'll ever experience when you can just read the Bible without a scientific worldview. Just read it literal. And I say this all the time, like a child would read it. We're taught to have faith like a child. If a child reads the Bible and reads all the creation verses and draws with a crayon, you read all these verses to them, what would they draw? Would they draw, what we're talking about here today, or would they draw a big bang heliocentric cosmology? There's nowhere to be found, and it's nowhere to be found because it was not the truth from day one. It's been Satan's lie all along to deceive us, to get us away from the credibility of the Bible. And how you take out the credibility of the Bible is take it out in book number 1, Genesis. Once you take it out there, all the rest are open, to fall.
And just to clarify, he was asking, could it be possible that this Nibiru that everybody's been talking about is in fact a fallen angel or Satan, and that's why there's this hype of waiting for Planet X to show up? Could this be the Assyrian that was talked about in that verse in Isaiah that's coming? We see that in Revelation. The dragon sweeps the stars out of the sky, and of course we see a parallel in Scripture with the stars being associated with the celestial beings, the angels. And so,
Sure.
very
Yeah,
interesting.
very likely, very likely. Sorry, I didn't really go into that, but yeah, I mean, when I get into my eschatology, I think that a lot of things are open up for interpretation for sure. Because again, when you were talking Revelations or we're getting into eschatology, that definitely is deemed, in a way that you can start looking at it and playing all these different scenarios. And I think it's important to start looking at a lot of different scenarios because, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're all clueless on what truly is going to happen. There's a lot of ideas out there, and just like it was said that no man knows the hour, the day, so there's certain things that I think likewise that no man knows exactly how it's going to happen. Be on the lookout for deceptions, be on the lookout for lies, and the more we're clinging to the truth, the less we'll believe any lies. But I mean, who knows? I think everything's worth looking into as far as the great deception or the events that are going to play out in the end times. I think a lot of things could definitely piece together, especially with the Isaiah verse. Yes.
Yeah, people can endlessly, offer conjecture, but I definitely think with this cosmology and looking into a biblical cosmology, it will change your view on eschatology and what plays out, because there's some major things in eschatology in the book of Revelation. For example, the stars, falling to earth, the heavens being rolled away like a scroll, things that, too often, because we have a Big Bang, scientism cosmology, we are like, oh, that's just, poetry. It'll definitely change your eschatology when you look into this type of cosmology. Our next question is coming in from Luna, and it ties into kind of what we mentioned earlier when we were talking, when you said no man knows the day or the hour. And Luna is asking, if they lie about the globe, how do we know that it's really 2018?
We don't. We really don't. I mean, we're going based on the fact that it's 2018. But yeah, I mean, there might be a point we don't. I mean, again, there's different calendar systems. So in other calendar systems, we wouldn't be in 2018, and who knows? I mean, it's a really good question. It's like how much history have they changed? Things like this. We all know that even in the history books, history is written by the winners, not the losers. So we already know that that's biased. That's why I'm saying that the Bible is not just a history book. It's not just a science book. I mean, it's the Word of God. You can't relegate it just to a history book or something. It's something that's been preserved throughout time. And that's why we can trust in it. But also, what's nice is we can know based on what the Bible says, where things are at, where truth is. Because you're right, we could be born and people could tell us it was 2020 right now. How would we know, right? How would we know if we're born up and the whole world was saying one thing? So yeah, it's a really good point. It's like these are the type of things that people might say that's absurd. Why would I look into it? But we should. Why not? Why not? It's just like this topic we're talking about tonight. have the courage to look into it. When is it a bad thing just to ask questions? We should always ask questions.
Absolutely. And of course, 2018, that's based on a Gregorian calendar. And here at Now You See TV, we have plenty of episodes that are all about getting back to the calendar that's in scripture. So you can look into that if you want, Luna. And our last question for the night is Jasmine is writing in and asking, since God set us on earth to have said dominion on the earth, do you think trying to go to space is a sin and disobedience? In other words, we should not be trying to leave Earth's atmosphere since this is our place of habitation.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, if we were curious, I don't think there's anything wrong with being curious, but if we went up there and then we hit this object, we fell back down, we probably shouldn't keep trying to go up and try to go through that object, let's just say. Or if we went up and things happened, things broke down, I think it's a clear sign. So, yeah, I think that's kind of what went on with Antarctica and with different agencies as they went up. And again, man, in that pursuit, with Satan governing them, they're definitely trying to do some devious things. They're trying to, deceive the world. But also, I think there's the war, there's different things at play here. So, it's almost like this is part of the agenda. If you get into, like, I think it's the book Enoch or Jasher, it talks about how they were trying to go up to find out, in the Tower of Babel, they were trying to go up to find the windows of heaven. So possibly they could get in and kill God. Nimrod, this was the idea behind the Tower of Babel. I think it's in Jasher. So again, the idea that if they can crack the firmament, if they can get through there, it's not that they can go exploring planets. It's maybe that they can get closer to God. Is that they can do something nefarious. So what I'm looking at, it's kind of the motivations of the heart. If you're just more curious and you're just like wanting to go for a little ride in a balloon up and up and up, it's one thing. But when your pursuit is to go in to try to cause harm to God, then you definitely have to question it for sure. But I don't think there's anything inherently sinful about wanting to go up. But reading the Bible when we're clearly taught that this is what they're there for, they're lights. I mean, why would you want to be closer to a light? Like what purpose would it serve? It's going to get brighter. It's going to be harder to see. And yeah, it just doesn't make sense. So I think if God was conveying that, hey, I put lights in the sky for you, that really, I'm not really interested to go up and see what that light's made of, in the sense that, we're trying to dissect creation too much. And where in the Bible do we have any directive or narrative where we're trying to dissect God's creation and studying it and learning it? There's no real command. I don't think it's sinful to try to do it to understand if it brings glory to God. But again, you bring up a good point when it comes to, going up. If we can't and there's barriers in place, we shouldn't probably keep trying to knock out those barriers to go higher if we weren't supposed to go high at all. And that's my belief system, is that we can't go up higher. The Van Allen radiation belt. There's a lot of proof, and there's a lot. If you just start looking at the evidence, you'll see more evidence to support the fact that we can't go very high than the evidence to support that we are. I mean, it's a big fairy tale when they're sending pictures back from Mars, 120 million miles away, pictures. What kind of Wi-Fi connection is that through the whole universe, through the Van Allen radiation belts, and yet we get pictures? I mean, we have a hard time, with this call cutting out here and there, and we're not even that far away, yet they're going to send us pictures, live pictures from Mars. So you got to start just using your head and saying, wait a minute, our technology, although it's good, it's not that good.
Yeah, and if only we could get that cell phone service that they're using to get these images back from these planets
Sure.
millions of miles away. Well, that was our last question for the night. Robbie, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us about Scientism Exposed. For those of you who are interested in getting this film, Scientism Exposed 2, I have all of the information in the description below. You can get it several different ways. One, you can subscribe to nystv.org. We have a promo code on there for Robbie, and you can watch it on nystv.org. We also have a link down there for Celebrate Truth's website to buy the actual physical copies of the DVD. Please check that out in the description. And Robbie, if you would also give us some information on FEIC 2018, where people can find out about that in order to sign up for that conference.
Sure. First, I wanted to mention the Scientism Exposed To. If you're watching it on Now You See TV with the subscription model, awesome. If you do want a physical copy, if you go to celebratetruth.org, there's a 10% off your entire order if you use YSTV. So if you just use the initials for Now You See TV, you get an additional 10% off, which is awesome if you want the physical DVD. But like Jake said, the subscription service is there through their model. You can see both, actually, Scientism Exposed and Scientism Exposed To with Now You See TV. And for the Flat Earth International Conference, you can find out all the information at fe2018.com. That's just F as in flat and E as in earth. So flat earth. So fe2018.com. And you can check out all the links there. You'll see the ticket information. And yeah, like I said, sign up early. We sold out early last year, and we're expecting some big things for this year. It's going to be a lot of fun. Try to make it out. It's all the way in November. You got lots of time to save if money is an issue, but try your best to come out. It's going to be a blast. I'd love to meet you there, and I know that Jake will be there and other people from Now You See TV. It's going to be an awesome time. So please come out. And yeah, if you want to follow me on Facebook, just Robbie Davidson, and you can see all my stuff on YouTube at Celebrate Truth. I've got over 300 videos now. I've got about 8 documentaries, and I think I'm closing in on 7 million views in total. So there's a lot of people waking up to this truth, and I'd love to hear your feedback, and I love your support. Thank you so much for everything. Thanks for having me on, Jake, and everyone at Now You See TV. It's a real honor and pleasure always coming on.
Awesome. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Now You See TV. It's been Jake Grant and Robbie Davidson on Scientist Secrets and Conspiracy Fact. And until next time, everyone, good night. Shalom.